The holiday can be a time of great joy and celebration, but for many, it can be a time of stress, loneliness, and exhaustion.
Yeah, joining us with tips on how to get through this season feeling replenished, rejuvenated, and ready for the new year is Pundit Dasha. He is a mindfulness and workplace culture expert and author of the book, Closing the Apps, How to Be Mindful at Work and at Home. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Such an important topic. Let's start off with talking about the health risks of loneliness.
Yeah, so the holidays can be a real mixed bag of emotions. There's an excitement because the end of the year is here. We're going to start something new. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that are away from friends and family, and then naturally that can make us feel extremely lonely. And loneliness does, present us with a lot of health risks, such as a person who's experiencing extreme levels of loneliness can be at a greater risk of premature death. It can increase their chance of developing dementia by 50%. It can increase someone's chance of developing heart disease by 29%. And it can also increase someone's chance of developing a stroke by 32%, and also is associated with higher rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide. So it is a very serious health hazard, so to speak, for us to be mindful of.
Well, let's break that down a little bit. What about someone who can't be near family? Maybe they're not talking anymore, they've had a big fight, or they've lost someone in their life, like maybe a spouse. How do they cope with loneliness?
Well, I think one of the things is just to sort of be careful of social media, because when you're looking at social media, people are obviously posting the best quick moment of their life, and it may not be reality, but you see a whole bunch of people celebrating. It can exacerbate the situation, make us feel even more depressed and more anxious. So one thing is, let's not be hesitant to reach out to friends and family members, friends who we are on good talking terms with, family members who are there to support us, being proactive in reaching out to others. Perhaps there is a hobby that we can engage ourselves and pick it back up. So, because the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So I think that's really important, being able to rediscover a hobby, picking up a hobby. And maybe there's a virtual group or an in-person group that we can join. Perhaps it's a reading group, perhaps it's an exercise group, other sporting athletic activity that we can do with others, just to be able to cope with the feeling of loneliness. And of course, one of the most powerful ways that we can deal with loneliness is seeing how we can be of service to others in our community. There are always so many people going through so many challenges and difficulties, and seeing how we can actually be there for them, uplifting them, because that brings so much meaning and so much purpose to our life. So I think these are some ways that we can deal with loneliness.
Yeah, such good advice. I do like a little exercise to kind of get me out of any little holiday funk. Tell us about the importance of self-care during the holidays and how they can prioritize self-care.
Yeah, while we're busy running from gathering to gathering, or going to this party or this family gathering, we can sort of lose touch with our own selves and our own needs. I like to always mention that self-care isn't selfish, that, if we don't put our own oxygen mask on first, then, we're not going to be able to help anyone else. So as we're going to different gatherings, really being mindful of how much we're eating and drinking, because every single gathering is going to be filled with foods that aren't the healthiest in nature, because it's the holiday season and people aren't thinking about healthy foods necessarily. So being mindful of how much food we're taking in. If we're going to go to 3 or 4 parties in one week, just being thoughtful of that. How much alcohol are we going to end up consuming? We don't want to come out of 2022 having gained like a dozen pounds at the beginning of 2023. So just being mindful of that. And of course, just also being thoughtful about how many commitments we're making, right? Understanding that it's okay not to attend every single commitment, and knowing your own limitations, and being okay to say no, that you can't really attend every single gathering that's happening. And of course, very, very important, making sure that we're just getting enough sleep at night, just so we can have the energy and sort of the enthusiasm to show up and bring our best selves forward when we end up at one of these gatherings.
All right, real quick, this last one's important. What about people going through financial stress, which is typical during the holidays?
So I think one of the key things is try and create a budget. So know how much you can spend and what you can't spend. Otherwise, we don't want to come out of the holiday season depressed because we've exhausted all our finances. And if you're thinking of buying something really expensive for someone, instead of just buying something really expensive, ask them, what do you need? Maybe now you can get something useful and it's not even that expensive. And if it's for ourselves, to avoid impulse buying, because we can buy things with 2 clicks of a button now. Ask ourselves, is it a want, is it a need? And if we have too many things in the want category, then maybe we want to cross some of those off and focus on our own needs. And remember that the best gift we can give to anyone else is our own time, our own attention, and our own care.
All right. Oh, so many great tips there. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and happy holidays to you. Well, Pundit Dasa's book, Closing the Apps: How to Be Mindful at Work and at Home, is available wherever books are sold and on his website, Pundit Dasa.